People are afraid of AI taking their job. But if you can learn to use AI to your benefit, learn to prompt it properly, set up your custom GPT, whatever you need to do, it will help you add more value to whoever you're trying to add the value to as well.
Rabbit hole to AI because it ain't going nowhere. It's only going to get bigger. I want to get so good at AI that I'm irreplaceable. And if you're putting quality training in, you're going to get quality output out of it. If you don't have any training on a situation, you're probably not going to get any output from it. And your Waymo is going to just go back and forth in the middle of the street. I think it comes back to something where you can never remove it. It's the human factors leaning so heavily into AI that we start missing the whole point of it in the first place is to build in patient safety and quality.
Cybersecurity is evidence of quality code.
Full stop.
Hello, and welcome back to the Med Device Cyber Podcast. Today, we're going to take you down a journey to see where the intersection of healthcare, cybersecurity, and some military experience can come in to tie everything together. I'm joined here by our co-host, Christian Espinosa, and we have a very special guest, Brandon Fertig. Brandon, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself here.
Hey, thanks, Trevor. I'm really glad to have made this connection. Christian and I met at the medtech world, so I want to give them a plug for their ability to connect people of like-minded backgrounds and create and generate excitement around a lot of the work that we do. Christian and I kind of talked at some medtech conference in San Diego, and I know we've talked online about the medtech world conference. And unfortunately for me, that remained remote due to the government shutdown and some of the nuances of what happened last year. So I was trying to make it out to the World Conference, but I'm going to try to do that again very soon, Christian. So, as you guys asked me to be here today, just my background is I did 20 years in the Air Force. I started off in IT. So Christian and I share, I think, appreciation for the military. When we kind of started cutting our teeth, networks were in their infancy. And, they were just coming out of like, a lot of things were still text-based, especially in the military. ADA, we used ADA for programming or a lot of government programming, things of that nature. And they were, the forefront of setting up domains, DMZs, firewalls. Security was a huge thing that everybody was projecting going to be a huge job for everybody. And it was, and it is today. So cutting my teeth on that really gave me an opportunity to see a broader scope of what happens behind the scenes as you get into leadership, as you get into management. You have a great perspective of what it takes to get projects running, and security is always a major factor. So when Christian and I discussed this podcast, I think we both found that we're going to have a lot to talk about. I'm very excited to be here, so thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining. Where are you coming from today, Brandon?
Yes, I work remotely, so I do like to travel. Haven't been to 60 countries for the Air Force, but also for my own enjoyment. I travel extensively, but today I'm coming from Arkansas. I set up camp here mainly because I used to teach here at the C-130 schoolhouse. I used to fly C-130s in the Air Force, and coming here, it was based on a network need. But now that I've been here, we've made huge leaps and bounds in the medical space here. And that actually was a secondary effect of me just being in a project management role and also being central to the whole country. Arkansas is an affordable place to live, has a lot going for it. It's big growth, big vision here. And also, I think people are looking to find better ways to do business and save money. And Arkansas has been really hot for that right now. A lot of business moving in here, technology, AI businesses, security, and healthcare are all huge right now in the metro Little Rock area. And just happen to be in the right place at the right time. So come to you from the Midwest, kind of considered South and West of America. It allows me to get on a plane and jump anywhere I need to be in a moment's notice. And it's really flexible. So we use it for a springboard, and we love living here.
Yeah, awesome. I graduated high school in Arkansas. I moved to Arkansas when I was 12 from California.
Small world.
And then I moved to a small town in northwest Arkansas called Clarksville. It was actually called Knoxville. And then I moved it. It had 800 people in it. And I developed a thick Southern accent. It took me a year to get rid of that accent when I went to college. People made fun of my accent at the Air Force Academy quite a bit. But I got rid of it. I think I got rid of it. Every now and then it shows up, especially if I go back to Arkansas.
Yeah, I tend to kind of get around my audience. I try not to. It's not like you're making fun of the accent, but you kind of get plugged into what people are talking like. And I'm from the Northeast. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, so a lot of the yinzer will come out every now and then about crick or a washcloth is a washcloth. It's just little things like roof and roof. America's so great like that. Like you can go anywhere and you'll hear a little bit of where somebody's from. But the Air Force kind of got rid of that for me.
Yeah, the Air Force got rid of it for me too. My wife's mother is from, Arkansas, and she says "washer," the
Oh, sure.
dishwasher, you know? Yeah, the
Yes,
washer.
that is the proper way.
Right. Well, cool, and thanks for your service. I know you flew for a while as well as did, cybersecurity in the Air Force, is that right?
Yeah, I had a really crazy beginning. It really started off being in my brother was computers. He's a savant. He's one of the smartest people I've ever met. And he kind of opened the door for me when he got out of high school to be like, hey, this is what I'm getting into. And it's huge. So it was, again, somebody leading and I was willing to follow. And it started with my brother. So grew up kind of very humble means, kind of the American story, at low income housing and had a single mom, but I didn't have a lot of opportunity. The Air Force gave me that and had a brother who was in IT. So those two came together. And then I needed to have a way to move forward and to make something of my life. And IT gave me everything. It really did. So starting off, it was really eye opening as to what you can get into if you have the time and the desire to put that work into it. And I think anybody can do IT, but I think some people do have a knack for it. It came in family. So my brother kind of opened that door for me. And then I started pursuing college, and then college led to 9/11. 9/11, I joined the military straight after that. I just felt like I needed to go. And so in the first 4 years, I built out domains in Charleston, South Carolina. Uh, I was then in Korea for a year and built out geographically separated units that came with VPN work, that came with getting knowledge on virtual private networks and building LANs and WANs and how those affected you and security wise, especially in Korea. And this is early 2000s. So a lot of stuff was just uncoordinated. There was no quality management system behind it. So a lot of the things we made up were, it was grassroots comm guys coming in there and be like, hey, I'm just a computer guy, but this is what I think we should do. And the Air Force would be like, okay. So nobody anywhere was really all that well coordinated in the beginning years. And then eventually we centralized to Scott Air Force Base out of Illinois, and Scott Air Force Base then they started getting smart on this. We're like, we need to have every domain look the same so that everything was, understood and you could teach your workforce to work around that, which is ironic. I work in teaching a workforce now for medtech, but those early years, we were making it up as we were going, Trevor, Christian, because we didn't have a set of standards, which I thought, when you're young, you're like, I don't really feel like I'm bringing a lot to value here. But in hindsight, those were my formative years. It was like working in the unknown. So I started off that way. And then aviation kind of came in my knowledge about, you can fly in the Air Force. I wasn't an officer, so I didn't want to go back to school right away for that. I was more IT driven, more management driven. So I started flying in the Air Force as an enlisted member. And when I started doing that, it took me all over the world. It taught me how to, be dynamic and to learn. Went on to get my bachelor's and master's. And I think the aircrew world gave me confidence that I wasn't going to get in IT and an office. So it really kind of developed me over time. It was like, okay, I got the background, I've got this management style, and then it grew me to who I was. And then when I got out of the military, Phil's picked me right up. They're like, yeah, you have all these skills we need. Project management is where you're at. So again, I followed what people were telling me and listened very carefully to what people were telling me.
So the military skills helped you get into medtech?
It did. It did. It paved the whole way.
Cool. And, you're also part of medtech vets, as well, is that right?
Yeah, and MedTech Vets was really my way to give back. So as I transitioned out of the military, kind of give you maybe some more of that story. When I came out, I knew I would, for me, it was kind of really a weird time. I came in right after 9/11 and we left Afghanistan in 2021, which is almost a 20-year anniversary. And that was the 20 years I served. So, in the military, you can take a full retirement at 20 years. So I knew how much time I had left. And about 2 years before I separated, I started to really key in on what was important to me. I had a master's degree. In fact, only 0.8% of the Air Force at the time I looked that statistic up. I think they did a census in like 2017 that only 0.18% or 0.08% of the Air Force actually has a master's. So I was like, well, man, I'm bringing a lot of value. I think there's something else I need to be looking at. And then that confidence started to come. And then I got my PMP. And then Phillips was kind of that transition period where it was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I had a brother who worked at Phillips. Again, the same guy who kind of gave me that confidence. That older brother said, "Hey, why don't you come look over here?" And I wasn't medical. I think that's one thing we need to tell our audience is that you don't necessarily have to be medical to work in IT and in medtech. because the transition for you is, can you lead a team? Can you be a problem solver? That's the huge one. Can you talk the talk? Can you understand complex problems and kind of understand what your customers are going through? And if you can make all those things happen and then get in an interview where you explain what you would do, people are going to see your value right away. So I got picked up within 3 weeks of retirement. So I had a retirement and then I was like, okay, let's go. And then Phillips hired me in and gave me my first shot. I've given them the last 4 years because of that. There's discipline that comes at Phillips with when you get in there, you appreciate, especially from a military perspective, that someone gave you your first shot. And I gave them everything. And they've taken good care of me since then. So there's been a promotion in there. There's been a lot of exciting work. And then I just generally on the outside, I try to bring that same value to medtech vets, to give back to veterans, to give back to others, raise money for veterans by climbing Kilimanjaro last year, and just doing what I just know that I enjoy and just being myself. And those things all came together at Phillips.
That's awesome. Trevor just was promoted. I don't know when it was, Trevor, to COO. So he's
A couple months back.
yeah, so he's
Mhm.
in the hot seat with leadership and everything else. So what do you think, Trevor? Like a lot of what Brandon was saying about those skills you have to learn as a leader and all that to bring to the table. Like, what have you with the transition to COO? What have you found?
I found that I probably could have used some of those skills and the discipline picked up in the Air Force. I did not go down that path. So feels like at some points flying a little bit blind, but I think that, going up through a process, going up through a company, different at the enterprise level and at the startup level, but being able to see your own growth and control that, I think is a really powerful thing. And even expanding past from, before being hands on keyboard, executing most of the tests that we were doing up to this point is giving me a bit of a perspective where I understand where the process came from initially. I've seen it, I've been part of it for so long that I think it's given me a bit of a good insight where I'm trying to translate those skills. And the rest of the skills, becoming an effective COO, that's going to be a work in progress, but trying to get a little better at it every day.
Yeah, in our company, I don't know how many we got. Maybe I don't know, like 5 or 6 veterans, I think. One from the British Army, so he's a little bit different. But yeah, I think veterans bring a certain unique discipline to the workforce, and they're used to working under pressure, and then most of the time they stay fairly calm. I don't know. What do you think about? Is that true, Trevor? Based on the veterans we have in our company?
I think so. And, for an example, our director of project management is a veteran and she's able to proceduralize and take any of the questions or any of the gaps out of a process to an incredible effectiveness. And so if there's ever any question, how do we do this? Where's the wiggle room there? Those questions go away. And that is such an important skill, I think, especially within the project management realm. And it's really important. It's really effective to see. I don't think that it's an easy skill to have either. Understanding how to poke the holes in a process it's not going to be an intuitive thing. Just following a process and saying, "Oh, well, it's not perfect, but what is so much easier than saying, what can we do to make it perfect?" Or at least, 95% of the way there.
Yeah, solving the problems and coming up with a standard operating procedure and removing the ambiguity is definitely a skill. And that's something, you have to have the military if you want to have a bunch of people on the same mission and align, they have to know what the operating procedures are and everything else.
It makes me think back to what you were saying earlier, Brandon, about kind of the early days of like the early 2000s with IT when it was a little bit of the Wild West. There was no standard process for going through things. And I wonder, obviously it's not as much the case anymore. There's been cybersecurity's been a bit more of a battle tested industry. It still changes really fast, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on how the more proceduralization and I guess formalizing cybersecurity and IT in general has been beneficial both for the good guys and for the bad guys. I mean, we see ransomware gangs and cyber criminals organizing and operating like well-oiled machines at this point, just the same as the defenders do.
Yeah, it's gotten crazy. And, encryption comes to mind, and how if you're not building powerful passwords, people are they're spending their whole day trying to figure out how to break that puzzle, right? The people love to rip puzzles apart. And I think it's human nature. And those people know how to utilize that in the security space. And so I love that you brought that up. And so I actually have some notes I took here to actually talk about that very thing. Overall, the threat landscape in healthcare, I think is your all's top target. I think it's ours at Philips as well. In some of the case studies that I did for this call or for this podcast was, I discovered that in 25, 26, there was a breach at Managed My Health patient portal. exposed hundreds of thousands of medical records. It triggered legal and regulatory problems. Right, that's the first thing that I'm going to be worried about as a QMS guy. Who's where's my legal prospects? Where's regulatory going to come in and say we got to fix this? Because someone's accountable. Everybody's accountable to somebody. If you don't have, it's like you said, the Wild West. If you don't have accountability. And so multiple large healthcare systems in the last couple of years have had huge problems with ransomware, unauthorized access, and incidents, security incidents the last 18 months, exposing millions of records. You can see there's a lot at stake because our patient safety quality, we call it PSOQ over here, is a huge factor for us in how we operate. And so security is paramount, as they say. So, I don't think it's just that. The key takeaways here are that healthcare data is highly monetizable. It's operationally critical. Making security failures are not just a privacy issue, but systematic patient safety risks are included. And I think the landscape is only getting broader for that. I think if we're not investing in people like Blue Goat, if we're not investing in our third party, if we're farming that out, if we're a large corporate company and we don't have that piece, we're making sure that that has to be part of the risk analysis we do in project management. I'll stop here for a second, but I really could give you a lot of examples of where we have learned the lessons in Philips and that we're not just reactionary, we are proactive in security.
I love what you mentioned there with the patient safety. It's so important in the medical space, and it's something that coming out of really most other cybersecurity areas in a traditional IT cybersecurity setup, even dealing with otherwise really sensitive systems, financial data, legal information, IP protection. You don't have this added layer of patient safety that is present in a space such as healthcare. And it puts a little bit of a twist on cybersecurity, and it puts a twist on the way that I think we need to handle and assess risk. It's part of what can make this such a murky, difficult process at times, is because it's such a divergence from what we'd see as a typical cybersecurity and assessment. I often tell people what you might expect to normally be a critical could come down to a low, and the inverse is just as true. It's a little bit of a changed lens that we're really approaching it from here.
Well, I think in the military, cybersecurity can cause some issues too, right? It's a little bit different than stealing credit card information. I mean, there for a while I did defense contracting work where we had to make sure like military drones were secure from somebody hacking into them and dropping bombs on the wrong people and things like that as well.
Yeah, that's huge. You spent a lot of time in the healthcare space. That's kind of how we met. Is that a target market for you?
Yeah, our target market is medical device manufacturers. We do some with digital healthcare, but primarily medical device manufacturers. We work with them to design cybersecurity into their product and to do their pre-market submission. So we do all the documentation, all the testing, everything required for a pre-market submission. Then once the device is on the market, we do post-market management, which is that annual contract and continuous monitoring. So we work basically from the total product lifecycle from design to disposal, ideally with a client, a medical device manufacturer.
Yeah, I'm trying to kind of figure where I should lead my conversation. I think we deal a lot with informatics and HL7, DICOM, dealing with if you're building a product for a customer, right, especially in imaging equipment where Philips is, in my opinion, the best at it. Of course, I'm going to say that, but when it comes to imaging equipment, we also have to then also work with the GEs and the Siemens and the other machines that put out a DICOM, right? That standardization of HL7 and patient records and things of that nature. As soon as you open that gate up, right, there's a floodgate of data on patient records. There's a floodgate of, so if you're dealing with like DICOM and patient records, you have to put them into an informatics system. Do you build that into product that you're working with? Are you dealing with those kind of things?
It can be all over the place. So, obviously everyone's going to have a unique requirement. DICOM's an especially tricky one to figure out. The image format,
Super old protocol, isn't it?
super old. I mean, the format hasn't been touched since, yeah, it's 1997 was the last time they did much with it. And since then, you've still been able to roll up malicious executables into DICOM images, and you've still been able to execute them within DICOM images. And, DICOM is transferring DICOM images, partially because it's so old, does not by default include TOS while passing patient records along. So it is a complicated one to figure out. When we're talking with our clients that, are facing these problems, there are a couple things that we need to figure out here. The first is what can we control? And the second is what can the healthcare delivery organization, hospital, wherever it's going to be, control? And that governance question is one with out a really easy answer. Who is responsible for what? Should the hospital be required to enforce TLS on, any DICOM communications? Generally, that's where the responsibility is going to lie right now. Or should this be something where the manufacturers are making a shift and the healthcare delivery organizations have to adapt to it? And of course, this is just picking on DICOM as a specific example, but these are the types of thought paths that we have to go down when we're trying to figure out how can we solve a problem that is technically difficult to tackle here.
Well, that's what it's about, is solving these challenging problems.
Yeah, I'd like to give you an example, I think, of what we've seen and to get your input on it. Without speaking to any vendor specific or any third party vendor or anybody we've kind of worked with, I'm here as on my own account from my own work experience and not necessarily representing any company at this point in this conversation. But I do like to share some of the things I think that are maybe our doctors, maybe our nurses, maybe people who are dealing it with the actual data and they're not IT people. They might have certifications in informatics or some of the things that I've got smart on the last couple of years. I know that there's a lot of certifications you get for informatics professionalism and that full understanding of those who are listening to this right now. I think what was exciting as I started to learn about the product, because I'm coming from IT and then learning healthcare systems, get smart on what an HL 780T is, which is your, mission, discharge, and transfer protocols. And a lot of them aren't natively monitored or protected. They don't have encryption built in. And there's opportunity for middle software engineers like our companies, Philips and Blue Goat, that we can create those harden those HL7 and DICOM endpoints, encrypt traffic, take care of our customers, but still get everything working. And I can give you an example of when we go into a project, and Philips is very good about doing an after action report. So when we learn from it, we're not making this. I like to think of Philips as like the Apple iPhone. It's this incredibly polished product. We go behind the scenes, we take lessons learned, we make it pretty, we bring the customer a top-notch product, and then we partner with people like, not directly with you guys, but people like you who are doing the work you're doing. So we build DMZs, firewalls, we build those things into our projects so that when we get to the project level, if you're not getting ahead of that at the SNSD level, which is our service and delivery model, sales is going to sell you a product that you're going to need to have all that back end understood. So you need to have good quality people. And I think from the research I did, that's not a lot of things that are taken into account right now. We need to have that built into our project planning, our program management, because as we get it deeper and deeper into security issues, we're finding that those are reactionary things. We're not doing them proactively, especially security, because it may cost too much. We'll get there when we get there. But that to me is a 2-step forward, 1-step back approach, because now you're spending more money planning, more money waiting. I'm telling you, 4 to 6 months we waited for a DMZ and a firewall to be installed because it wasn't in planning. And those were things that were at the time not known because we thought those had been taken care of. But then when we get to the planning and you plug the switch in and you're the project manager there on site with your DICOM TC team, your technical consultants are like, hey, it just red flagged the port. Now port security is in play, and the entire security network that was based behind that was not brought into the planning. And they're like, nope, we're going to have to DMZ this. We're going to have to put a firewall behind it. And we got to do that at 13 sites with these projects that we're doing. So now our customers are waiting, and it's not necessarily a Philips problem, but because we didn't plan for it, everybody's paying the price. And that's why we need to have knowledgeable people like you coordinated. And then we need to have people like you guys that are already on the books to get this ready to go. And if we're not doing that, we're wasting money and time.
It's a huge part of why these regulatory authorities are pushing for the total product lifecycle consideration. They don't want to see cybersecurity treated as a point in time study, which I think is one of the bigger misconceptions within the industry, is that you can say, well, when do we do cybersecurity? There is no when, it's always. It's baked into the product by, design. A great quote that I heard once was that cybersecurity is evidence of quality code. Full stop. If you have a quality product, you have cybersecurity designed into it. And within the healthcare space, we need to design quality products. So making sure that we're planning and thinking these activities out towards the beginning, not only is it going to lead to us having a more effective product, but it avoids these situations like you're mentioning where everybody pays in the end. The manufacturer isn't getting to market on time, or they have to make these massive design overhauls. The customer is upset if they're expecting to get a product. For some smaller companies, they may run into headache with their investors if their timeline gets pushed back. Just dealing with the FDA review cycle and then the hold letter, it can take up to 270 days if they're missing issues with cybersecurity. And so you have to factor, if we get this wrong, can we afford almost a year of downtime to fix this?
speaking engagement at University of Arkansas, and I was talking to MBA students about project management, and these are MBA students, right? They're not IT directly. Some of them are, but one of the things that I brought up to them was it actually was on the board of one of the last pictures that the teacher took. It said, if I'm going to plan a project and I think I can do it in 1 month in a corporate setting, you better put it for 6 months because every time you plan ahead, you're giving your customer that feeling like, oh, they're going to get this done in a month. And then as a project planner and a project manager, you're like, yes, I'm going to kill this. But then I don't understand the nuances, especially young project managers coming straight out of school or someone who hasn't been around a little bit. Every time I did that, it was like it set me up for failure because I was telling my team, I'm like, we're going to get this, we're going to get this, we're going to get this. And then a month goes by, you start to lose. Really, now you're talking about your actual quality of people and quality of project planning. So it's not a security problem. Then it has secondary and after effects, that ripple through your patient safety and quality vision for the company and for the people you're working for. So as a young project manager, I'm out there to tell you, don't jump the gun. Get security involved, get the planning right, get it right. Because if I tell my customer it's going to be 6 months, sure, they're going to be disappointed. That's a long time. But then you go back and you tell them regulatory, security, what other items can I just lump into this whole problem that we're about to solve for you? And it builds that confidence that, you know what, he did say it was going to be 6 months, but then they got it right. And that's huge. And that was one of those points on the board where people like, why did you write that it would take you 6 months to do a project that you thought you could do in a month? And I'm like, so let me tell you why. And that's what I told those students. It's one of those things where we can plan for every occasion. We call them snowflakes over here, snowflake projects, because a snowflake is so unique to itself, right? If you get a snowflake under a microscope, it is going to have crystals that look different every time. It's a fingerprint. And so we call these snowflake projects. We got to quit doing that because that's the accepted practice, but that shouldn't be the norm. That should be the exception. We're getting ahead of that. And I work directly in that workforce innovation office to do that. So I'm very excited to start to see the transformation of what we can get into when we open our minds to cybersecurity, getting ahead of project planning. And it all goes back to patient safety and quality and how are we executing for our customers.
I don't think we're the first people to say what you think may take a month may take 6. So why is this still such a challenge? At least on like almost every podcast Trevor and I do with somebody in medtech, they always talk about that the innovators should be engaging them way earlier on than they ever do. And they wait to the very end and it causes issues with market access, reimbursement. It doesn't really matter. It seems like this is a problem we should have decent handle on. And I'm unclear why we don't. Or it's just human nature.
I guess I could give you my opinion on it.
Sure.
Here's where I think we go wrong. It's that one, we automate as much as we can. If there's a position or something in the workforce innovation office where like, hey, this is a service max problem, or service max is how we take care of our customers over a service life of our product. That comes with the IDLE certification, and I went and got the IDLE certification, and I went and got smart on it. And I was like, why aren't we fixing these? I had the same question, Christian. Why are we taking so long to fix things? And then I think it comes back to something where you can never remove it. It's the human factors. I did human factors training I have a bachelor's degree in aeronautics. Human factors were such a huge role in aircraft accidents. Well, Christian, why do we have aircraft accidents still, right? We have every bit of the technology and automated everything we could possibly automate. But when you look at something called the shell model, it's software, hardware, environment, live wire, live wire. The two live wires are usually the unknowns. Those are the two things. Live wire means people. So if I have a person involved in a shell model and I've got the software down, I've got the hardware down, the software could be how we interact with the aircraft. The hardware could be how the aircraft is configured for landing. We have to put the flaps down. We have to put the gear down. All those things still require a human factors piece to it. GPS is automated at ADS-B. A lot of these aircraft things that they've automated still have a human component to it. And I can't think of any reason in healthcare why we still have same problems with patient safety and quality, or that, we get ahead of ourselves and then safety and quality factors into that. And then we get somebody hurt or we end up having litigation. I think why it takes 6 months, Christian, is because human factors. I think it's always going to be a player in everything that we do. And if we rush it, we rush to failure. And I think if you look at something called the Swiss cheese model in airplanes, a lot of people have heard this. If you line up a whole bunch of pieces of Swiss cheese, next to each other, eventually you're going to find if there's a hole to be found, there'll be one that goes through all the slices of cheese. I've got regulatory. I've got patient safety and quality. I've got my workforce trained. I've got all these different things. But if I miss any one piece in that 6 months, and one of my pieces of cheese doesn't stop it, it goes all the way through the Swiss cheese. And now we've got an art where I used to work with aircraft accidents for some of the dots. or a patient safety and quality, we have litigation, and now we have regulatory problems, and now we got to pay because we did not take the time to get the human factors ironed out. I think we shouldn't rush to failure, but I agree with you. We need to speed things up as much as we can because AI is, and I'd like to make this segue. I'm going to stop talking here in a minute. I want to hear what you think about AI fixing a lot of these problems with human factors. And I've got some talking points for that as well.
AI. It always comes back to AI. I
Buzzword.
AI is always a little it's a little bit yeah, exactly, buzzword. Okay, perfect. There go the views. It's always a little bit of a touchy one since you're talking about that human factor and that human element and how much of that can be effectively removed. I think that that line is moving basically daily at this point. Are you going to need junior software engineers in 5 years? Probably not. That's probably going to be pretty much fully replaced. Senior software engineers? I don't think so. So there's always going to be this element where you can push it to a certain extent, and that's about as far as you can go. And we've tried, internally, we've tried to get some battle tested solutions for AI on accurate regulatory advice that does not slip up based on what the regulators want to see more so than just what is written verbatim in the document, because there can always be a little bit of a divergence. And it doesn't do a good job when there are these gray areas here. And when there's this nuance on, a human to human connection on trying to allow effectively get the process moving, I don't think AI is the best of it. Now, having said that, for something that is repeatable, proceduralized, and consistent, AI is fantastic at that. And so building out, pick an example out of a hat here, threat modeling. Threat modeling is a consistent proceduralized process. There's a lot of creative input into it, but the output is going to be really consistent. That is a great use case for automation, for putting AI in and taking that human element out. The human element still has to go, well, are we really covering every threat here? Maybe I can be a little bit more creative than the AI. In our experience, that tends to be the norm. We can, do some work with a first pass from AI, but it's never going to get to the extent that a senior penetration tester could. I think that, of course, we're coming in from a very narrow lens here with cybersecurity. We aren't looking at the entire product and the entire development that goes into this. There's so many missing factors here that I won't speak to since I'm not going to be, the right knowledge source for that, not the right KOL as we were talking about on our last episode. But I think that, yeah, in general, wherever you're going to need an expert in that human touch, AI's still getting there, but I think that it's bridging most of these gaps pretty fast.
Oh, how do you train AI for all these edge cases, though? I think this is where the problems come up. Like Trevor, you talk about Waymo. We talk about Waymo a lot, and there's Waymo here, but you're saying a human has to take over the Waymo if it's like certain traffic conditions. So like,
So I'll get,
and Waymos have been out a long time. Like, why haven't they figured this out?
there are too many unique. Yeah, there's all sorts of weird stuff. They're paying people to walk around and close the doors for Waymos now because they haven't figured out how to automate the door closing process. A couple days ago, I was taking a Waymo and there was one of these huge, like a Greyhound bus just parked in the middle of the street. And this is in downtown San Francisco, narrow streets, there's kind of just chaos all the time going on. And so we get behind it, and the cars are going around the Waymo, around the Greyhound bus, and the Waymo keeps going into reverse, backing up a little bit, going forward, backing up a little bit, going forward. It's freaking out. It doesn't know what to do. Thinking back on it, I've never been behind a Greyhound bus in downtown San Francisco. So if I were a machine, I was not trained on what to do in that situation. I can connect the dots and go, I should probably make sure there's no car in the other lane and drive around the Greyhound bus. But the Waymo wasn't connecting the dots. And so I had the little thing that pops up, hey, we're getting you back on track. Someone's assisting it to get out of here or whatever. But when we have these unique situations, that's why AI is only going to be as good as what you've trained it on. It's garbage in, garbage out. And if you're putting quality training in, you're going to get quality output out of it. If you don't have any training on a situation, you're probably not going to get any output from it. And your Waymo is going to just go back and forth in the middle of the street.
Well, with medical devices too, the risk is very high if the device isn't trained from an AI perspective on specific use cases, right? It's not like, I mean, it's high in traffic too, but the Waymo is going to err on the side of not doing much, like that situation. Like I had a similar situation in Waymo here in Phoenix. It was behind a construction truck, and it had a blinker going both ways. So the Waymo kept turning this way and this way and this way, like for like 10 minutes. I think finally somebody took it over.
The interesting part that you bring up here with the Waymo is a good example of what might happen in healthcare or in a use case where you're trying to do this for another project. You've asked, why did things take 6 months? Well, now think about this for a second. Now Waymo is out there automated, and now it's holding up a construction truck, and the construction site is spending millions of dollars to get concrete poured or whatever they're doing. Now it's holding up traffic, and you waste all this time on these things that you automated, and then now you have secondary, tertiary effects to it, and you're causing some other company a problem. I mean, it's almost like a perfect kind of puzzle piece that you can kind of break out and say, hey, look how messed up this can be. What do you do in that case? Like you said, you add human intervention. I think it shouldn't be that you cut all the intervention out, that you build some in. And so you automate as much as you can, but you still have an oversight and you still have the ability to make those decision makers be aware of the things that aren't foreseen yet, right? You're still programming this thing. What I believe is happening right now in the workforce. Now, I'm overhead. I'm in the workforce innovation. I don't deal directly with customer. I deal with people who deal with customer. And so, when it comes to how much time does a company put into their workforce innovation, how much time does companies build in our risk management, risk mitigation? That's kind of where I'm at. I'm in there to re-steer the ship when we need to, and I'm building out processes. So how do I get better and then get rid of some overhead where I know that I can save the company money, get a better product for the customer, but I still am bringing myself into the value stream. If I do so well that I cut myself out of the value stream, that's not really intuitive for a person who's career minded. What I want to do is I want to get so good at AI that I'm irreplaceable. I'm a problem solver. I'm someone who's utilizing it, not scared of AI, but I'm someone who's going to go grasp it. I'm going to start reading it as much as I can. I'm going to get on ChatGPT and get an account. The company may not even pay for that, but I've taken the first time that I got into Philips, I started doing AI PowerPoint presentations, so I put waste time on. I started taking ChatGPT into account where I could that didn't have any patient information in it. And what could I streamline? A lot of our stuff is in how do we sell the product? How do we just, get it on prem? How do we then secure it? How do we build a product around it? And now it's becoming program management for me because now I'm also trying to service it with Service Max and some of the other things that we have at play. What can I do right now to help all those people that are right now scrambling to get the right information and the right timing so that all that orchestrates for our biggest customers? We have a lot of big hospitals, obviously, at Philips. But one of the biggest things for me, and we hit it on it at the beginning of the conversation, is the VA. The VA, I'm a VA member. Whatever benefits us to get things right is going to substantially make it better for myself and my peers because we're all part of that VA system coming out of retirement, coming out of serving 4 to 6 years, whoever served, thank you for your service. We want to get those things right at the VA too. How do we data stream? How do we build work streams that are deliberate in fixing problems? And one of the things we're doing right now is using AI, and this is the initiative I've taken, is I want to use AI to get everybody's ideas, everybody's run books, everybody's processes, whether it be clinical, technical, CPM, whether it be sales, whether it be all of these different people who have all this work on their plate and they're dealing with customer. I call them and I can get barely in 15 minutes to get a conversation with them just to find out what's not working. And they're so busy, I don't even get a word in edgewise. That breaks my heart because I'm like, they don't even have time to give us time for processes of improvement. And what I try to do is utilize AI to grab all of the workbooks that they have on show points. Everybody has their own thing. The company, why does it take so long to get stuff done? Is because the human factors of things change very dynamically. And so what one team is doing isn't always in stride with the next. What I'm utilizing right now is building in AI to grab all of these workbooks, align them in a work breakout structure and a process that will help our project managers and our sales team know exactly on the clock where we're at with a project. These are initiatives that are first of kind, and we have to test them. We have to have time to make sure everything's doing what it's supposed to do. Otherwise, we're going to be sitting in a bus not knowing what to do. We can't get around the bus because we're Waymo. So, I'm trying to build out the idea that we can get around the Waymo. We can fix the Waymo. I don't know if we should use that as the new word for like not moving forward. Is we're trying not to be the Waymo right now, and that's no crap against them. They're working like we are to try to build fix actions, but that's what I see. Look, if you're listening to this, and you're wondering how you can develop your career, you want to get into medtech, be a problem solver, and grab a hold of AI because it ain't going nowhere. It's only going to get bigger, and you can future-proof yourself and your teams by being a problem solver. Don't be afraid of AI. Be behind it, and I think that's the thing we need. I think tell people to stop the fear hungry. Is that AI is not there to take our jobs. It's there to make us more efficient and to drive what our customers need. That's they need their time, and AI can help us do.
I agree. Well, we're coming up on time here. So I'd like to go around the room and see anyone has any departing words or last minute words of wisdom. So I usually start with Trevor, and I expect you to say something different this time, Trevor.
Hey, I've been pretty good about different the past. I'll give it like the past 8 or 9. So I think something really important is, and we were touching up on edge cases. Edge cases are always going to be something, especially in the era of AI, that are hard to predict and they're hard to control. In the medical space, these edge cases, and like you were saying, Brandon, having this human element as a checkpoint inserted into the system is increasingly valuable. The more we're handing over to AI, the more it's going to be missing some of these edge cases. And so, we were just the other day talking with a cardiac surgeon who's saying, hey, I'm getting all this input, I'm getting all this information from all of these different machines and noises and beeps and alarms and signals. The patient is what I'm using as my main, is something wrong? If these alarms are saying, oh, there's a crisis, the patient's bleeding, but I look at the patient's not bleeding while I'm operating on him, blood pressure stable. Maybe these alarms aren't giving me the right, they're just creating noise. They're not giving me signal here. So understand your edge cases and understand how to handle them in an increasingly automated world.
I like it. What about you, Brandon?
Yeah, I think I'll follow Trevor in what you just said. Is one of my clinicians came back to me, and she's actually a peer of mine. She's a registered nurse, and she works with the innovation office. And one of the things we put out there was in our hospital patient monitoring equipment, we have a little figure. It looks like almost looks like the Muffin Man, the little cookie. It looks like a man with gingerbread man, and it says if he's having a heart problem, there's going to be a heart notification. If he's having if there's something at the connection in his arm, it's going to notify the arms blinking. It's going to tell the individual, like you said, who's trying to get more time with their patients, but also get them fixed and move on to the next patient. If you have a 100-bed hospital, there's only so many people that you can utilize at a time to take care of all those patients, especially in the ICU. So getting in there, knowing exactly where on the patient there's a problem, that AI is actually helping us in that. But what you said, Trevor, it's not going to replace the nurse. She still has to be there to fix the problem. She still has to be there to assess whether that is the problem. And as use cases get built out, maybe it gets better in the future. We're still using the human element to make sure that the processes and the safety and quality are where they need to be. And I think that we need to be listening to our people on the ground and not just leaning so heavily into AI that we start missing the whole point of it in the first place, is to build in patient safety and quality.
Awesome. I will add something that you said, Brandon, that I think is extremely important for anybody looking for a career or a pivot or to start a company, is to find a way to add value, like you mentioned, and then don't be afraid of AI. I hear a lot of times people are afraid of AI taking their job, but if you can learn to use AI to your benefit, learn to prompt it properly, set up your custom GPT, whatever you need to do, it will only help you, and it will help you add more value to whoever you're trying to add the value to as well.
Yeah, well said.
Awesome. Well, I hope everyone found this episode exciting and interesting and value added. And hopefully you'll tune into the next one. And we'll see you later on. Thanks, Brendan, for being a guest.
Thanks, Trevor. Thanks, Christian.
Great to have you on.